proceed.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
May it please the court. My name is Mariah Levin, representing the state of California. The United States Supreme Court should overrule the decision made by the 9th District Court of California in the case of Kevin Jones versus the state of California. This is true for two reasons. First of all, Kevin Jones was showing frustration in the interrogation room as opposed to a clear and unambiguous invocation of his rights. Second of all, according to AEDPA, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, a higher court cannot overrule a lower court's judgment unless it falls under one of the two following criteria. The first is if the findings are found an unreasonable determination of the facts in light of the evidence, or if they are contrary to clearly established federal law. First, let's address this issue of frustration. In the interrogation proceedings with Kevin Jones, he was slouching in his seat. He changed his story 3 times in a 2-hour and 45-minute interrogation. And even once he said, "I don't want to talk no more," he interrupted the police officer interrogating him and further said, "You're not listening to me. You don't want to hear what I'm saying." All of this together, and even the statement before, and even his body language and changing the stories before the statement, "I don't want to talk no more," indicate frustration.
Well, can't a suspect be both frustrated with an interrogation and also seek to terminate it? Why do those things have to be mutually exclusive?
The suspect in question has already spoken for 2 hours and 45 minutes willingly. What after the officer saying sit up, what changed in that moment? The petitioner argues that the invocation of rights is completely unclear in this case because of the body language that we see in the record, as well as changing the story 3 different times. Now, the court or the defense may say that according to Smith v. Illinois, anything said after an unambiguous invocation of rights should be considered inadmissible by this court. However, Smith v. Illinois is totally irrelevant here for 2 reasons. First of all, according to the frustration, as I previously showed, the defendant was showing frustration and not an unambiguous invocation of his rights. And second of all, Smith v. Illinois is a right to counsel case and not a right to remain silent case. These 2 cases are considered completely different in the eyes of the court until 2010. Regarding AEDPA,
Let me just interrupt you there. Maybe just even from a policy perspective, can you tell me what's wrong with applying those standards in a retroactive manner?
this would create massive problems for not only is it illegal, but it would create massive problems for the court system if they tried to have thousands, if not more, inmates trying to retry cases because of small adjustments to the law.
Is there really an adjustment to the law here, though, in the sense that isn't there an argument to be made that Tompkins didn't really change much about the invocation process insofar as in Miranda back in the 1960s, we enunciated that a suspect or an accused can invoke his or her right to remain silent in any manner. And so really isn't that what was done here?
I think in Tompkins, we're seeing a clarification of the law. It would be impossible to say if there was real differences in it unless you look at cases past Tompkins. But we see that the court's decisions have changed over the years. AEDPA is perhaps even more important than the issue of frustration. because this shows a true illegality in trying to address the lower court's decision and overruling it. It's actually illegal unless the findings are contrary to clearly established federal law. And in 2008, there was no clearly established federal law. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good
Good afternoon.
May it please the court, my name is Stephanie Miller for the respondent, Kevin Jones. The decision of California's Ninth Circuit Court in the case of Jones versus the state of California should be upheld, as the court correctly found Jones's invocation of his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent unambiguous, and any statements he made following this invocation therefore inadmissible. During custodial interrogation, Jones clearly said, "I don't want to talk no more." Now, this statement is unambiguous. It is a clear invocation of Jones's right to remain silent. Miranda versus Arizona clearly says that police may not question an individual if he is alone and indicates in any manner that he does not wish to be interrogated, and that following an invocation of this such, interrogation must cease immediately. Officers violated Miranda versus Arizona in this case by continuing interrogation, as he clearly said, "I don't want to talk no more." And the context in which he said this, this statement is irrelevant. Smith versus Illinois clearly says that context that brings ambiguity of an invocation into question is only relevant if it precedes or is part of the statement of invocation itself. Now, the context
Here we have, and this is of course assuming that we're going to apply Smith, but the petitioner relied heavily on facts that did precede the alleged invocation, the length of the interrogation, the body language of the accused. Why are those sufficient to call or cast doubt on the clarity of the request and the clarity of the request here?
Miranda versus Arizona clearly says that this right to remain silent can be invocated at any time during the police interrogation, and does not need to be invocated at the beginning of an interrogation or following a certain question. It can be invocated at any time.
That's true, but can't we look to sort of what was happening prior to the invocation in order to try and glean some measure of whether the suspect was actually intending to invoke his rights?
Yes. So, like Smith versus Illinois says, context preceding an invocation can be admissible. But in this case, the context preceding could also be seen as police tactics being used in order to pull out a certain confession or statement from Jones. They spoke to him for hours. It was very late at night. He was tired. He's young, only 19 years old. And so the police tactics being used could be seen as coercive, and he didn't want to be a victim to that any longer. Miranda versus Arizona also says that any invocation or any indication that in any manner that that the individual in custody wants to invocate this right, interrogation must cease immediately, and this right must be fully respected by the interrogating officer. The interrogating officer in this case even acknowledged Jones's desire to remain silent after he said, "I don't want to talk no more." The officer's first response was, "I understand, but," and continued to ask him another question, which is in clear violation of Miranda versus Arizona.
Let's stop there for a second, because in order to sort of look and see whether we can look at what happened after the alleged invocation, which we know Smith doesn't allow us to do in the context of continued interrogation.
Yes.
But the petitioner has made an argument that there was no interrogation after the invocation because there wasn't a question that was immediately asked before Jones interrupted the officer to make a statement that shed a little bit of doubt on the clarity of the original invocation. So does that fall, because there was no question asked, doesn't that mean that Smith doesn't apply here?
I believe, if I'm remembering the officer's response correctly, he started asking another question. And Jones's next response was, "You're not hearing me. You don't want to hear what I'm saying," which yes, in that case does indicate frustration, as the petitioner has said. but he's also responding to frustration in the fact that he's continued to being interrogated after clearly saying he no longer wishes to be interrogated. Finally, Edwards versus Arizona says that waivers of Fifth Amendment rights must be knowing and intelligent. And in this case, to say that Jones's continued conversation with the officer is a knowing and intelligent waiver of his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent is improper, because Jones was not necessarily aware of all the details of Miranda versus Arizona and all the rights that granted him. And therefore, he could not enforce his own right to remain silent for the interrogation to stop after he implicated that right.
Thank you, Counsel. Thank you. All right.
All right.